Lindsay Hyduke.
Hello.
Diana Rhodes.
Hello.
Jesse Doherty.
I'm here.
C.B. Brady.
Here.
Monica Ratliff. And Katie Severin. Okay. So yeah, missing Matt, Monica, and Katie. Thank you to everyone else for being here.
Great.
And then we can't approve the agenda or the meeting minutes. Lindsay, do you want to talk about the action item? We could always, or the committee could always vote by email. At least last I knew that was acceptable. If you think that's worthwhile.
Yeah, how about we go through the informational items and then maybe it's just reordering if we can. So the action item maybe last. If we have another committee member join us at that point, we could potentially approve the agenda minutes and then vote on the letter. Could we do that?
I think so. Erin or Christine, please correct me if that's not according to procedure. And Christine, thank you for starting the recording and providing the sign-in sheet. I would have completely forgotten both things, so thanks for being here.
No worries. I think that you can do, as you mentioned, that should work out great.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. All right, well, let's just go ahead and move into some of the informational items. I don't think we have to share screens at this point, but I'll introduce Anna Bozen with Department of Transportation. The topic I asked to have on the agenda was the lane reduction directive and safety projects, just to get some context for this new directive and how it can impact and is impacting some of the safety projects we've outlined as a community for Vision Zero and the like. So I think we can turn it over to Anna and get some more information, have a good discussion. Thank you for being here.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I didn't have time to put a presentation together, but what I can do is kind of go over what our thought process is right now for using the Chief Engineer's Directive to help us make a more robust defense of some of our highway safety improvement program projects that we have in the queue right now. So before I jump into that, though, I'll put in the chat a link to the Chief Engineer's Directive that we've been referencing. So let's see. So this came out in July of this year, and it is in response to a number of projects that are around Anchorage, where we've had some in the works for a while. You might be familiar with the planning environmental linkage for the Ingra-Gamble couplet. We've had also some HSIP nominations in the previous cycle. That was for in support. One was in support of the PEL, so the Ingra-Gamble 3-lane interim treatment. That was one of the alternatives as part of that project. So right now, Ingra-Gamble's 4 lanes in each direction, and the proposed HSIP project was a ranked safety project to reallocate 1 lane in each of those corridors to provide buffer space between the sidewalk and the vehicular traffic for snow storage and separation. A couple other nominations were for A Street, north of Fireweed. You may recall there was a fatal pedestrian crash in 2024, May of 2024, but there's been some other crashes as well. Also angle crashes and vehicular. So that was also going to be reallocating some space for separation and reducing the crossing distance there. And then another one was Northern Lights between Lois Drive and Lake Otis was also doing a lane reallocation there. So these have all come up, and I think this chief engineer's directive is just an opportunity to kind of make sure we are looking at all of the factors beyond just the safety benefit of these projects, but looking at the system in a more broader sense to better understand trade-offs of these so that they can proceed and have a better understanding when they're going through design. So, hey, Ray, can you turn that down? So with that, I do the link you see that I dropped in there. It has a letter from our chief engineer as well as a spreadsheet. And so before this meeting, you asked for me to kind of go over how this is a first chance at doing one of these spreadsheets for this project. So I am picking that Ingra Gamble couplet as just a sample for you to see. And this is based on, we've reviewed an example provided to us by the chief engineer's office. So in looking at that sample that was using a Fairbanks Road, College Road, you see here most of the columns are what is in the table provided online. So a section, evaluation factors, goals, has the goal been met, yes or no? And there's background analysis in it. This is more like a summary table, but you can see the type of topics that are looked at is travel time, intersection, peak hour, level of service, who the users are that are in the area, and some of the metrics to determine user comfort. And then also looking at safety. And then in terms of not just predicted crash patterns, but also in response times through the corridor. And then maintenance and kind of making a predicted maintenance cost assessment on that. And this is one of those that I'm challenged with because maintenance and operations are paid for by state funds and not federal funds. So it's a little different metric than what I'm used to. But it is offering an opportunity for me to work closely with our maintenance department in terms of learning how they operate in these corridors. So each one is operated a little differently. Ingra Gamble, north of 15th Avenue, is actually maintained by the city. So this is an opportunity for me to work closely with the city and learn about their equipment and their practices on hauling, et cetera. And then there's some other considerations too that look at consistency with local plans, whether there are alternate routes, and then how it might affect other users such as freight. And so my first stab at this, and again, this is just draft. I, haven't presented this to my colleagues or to the chief engineer yet, but I just wanted to put pen to paper before this meeting to give you kind of an understanding from my comfort level with it. And these highlighted cells are ones that I'm going to have to go into a little bit more depth. One-way corridors are typically about 20% more efficient on throughput than typical two-way corridors. So there's a little bit more calculations that need to happen for that. And then same with the intersection analysis. I did find this probably has the most robust data compared to those other projects I mentioned earlier. Ingra Gamble's been studied a lot over the years. And so I did do 15th and 15th and Gamble intersection, a level of service comparison, and it's actually operating at about a level of service E in the PM peak, which is the worst time, and then a level of service C in the AM peak, which is totally acceptable in an urban environment. And so the other intersection that might be one of the more restrictive ones would be at 6th Avenue. And just to, from all the volumes that are entering that intersection, and same at the Ingra side. Or at Fifth Avenue for Gamble and then Sixth Avenue for Ingra. But those are really the crux of the chief engineer's directive. It's not super restrictive in how it's looking at when you have all the data available. So I'm going to be working closely with Galen's group for the Ingra Gamble to finish out the analysis through this corridor. It will be a little bit of a challenge to do some of the other ones that I don't have enough data with, but I can work with our, over this winter time, I can work with our traffic data folks to see what historical data is available. I did want to show you some other spreadsheet and charts that I was able to show you trends, because I think the overarching goal of this chief engineer's directive is to make sure we're balancing the capacity for all of the users in these corridors, and to also try and mitigate any problems with congestion that might happen if we were to take and reallocate space from vehicles to something else. But you can see my predecessor had this really interesting spreadsheet I found for Ingra Gamble and some of the other corridors that we've already nominated, going all the way back to the 90s. And I bring up this chart because it shows really a story of Anchorage over time. You see in the 90s, we did have an uptick in volumes, and then it really kind of peaked around the early 2000s. And then we've basically been in a decline. So this is for the Ingra Gamble, and you can see these trend lines are averaging back for 3 years. So each of these columns are different points that we have collected data over the years, that we continually collect data every year. So these are points that we are tracking and can pretty easily start adding to a spreadsheet. I'll pull up another one that is also for Northern Lights and Benson. Similarly, you'll see our volumes kind of peaked around the early 2000s, and then we've been on a pretty consistent decline since then. And so again, if you put this together with the fact that all of these couplets are one way, you start talking about really an excess amount of capacity for what the volumes it can hold versus what it's actually showing. And why is that important? Well, we found during COVID, and this is happening kind of nationwide, when you have congestion actually provides some level of safety in an urban environment, because people are going slower, and therefore people who might be considered super speeders in other conditions are really held back. And then speed is really the base metric for many urban severe crashes that are happening. And so you'll see, again, these are other corridors around Anchorage. So Tudor, Muldoon, Boniface, and Seward Highway. Now these are two-way corridors. So even in those conditions, you will have a little bit slower operating speeds, maybe slower or lower capacity, but nonetheless, you'll still see these trend lines are kind of trending down, or they're flat. So that's I have another spreadsheet. Here's kind of a rule of thumb for travel speeds through a corridor, which is another calculation I'm about to do for the Ingra Gamble analysis. But so this is for signalized highways in an urban environment. And so you'll see even level of service A, and in our industry, we use these these letter values to indicate something that's positive. But even if a corridor is signed at 35, any speed that's more than 28 miles an hour is considered level of service A. So that's another way of analyzing the corridor, especially for a one-way couplet, because all of our signals are timed together. We have a lot more control over the speed through that corridor with minimal conflicts from the sides. So even if the intersections where the couplet ends at 15th and 5th and 6th, even if those intersections might be points of congestion, the rest of the corridor is likely operating very high. And then my last thing I'll just share, this is the raw data that I was using to populate some of those graphs. And so I calculated compound annual growth rate since 2012. So, 13 years or 12 years of data, because we only went through 2024 for our recent traffic volumes. But I just bring this up to show if we wanted to look at it from a linear perspective or a year by year rate, either way, we're declining. And so keep that in mind when you see projections of positive traffic growth, because in reality, we're either neutral or declining. So that's kind of it in the nutshell. And you saw some of the other metrics I still need to calculate are some of those high congestion point intersections, as well as the maintenance cost aspect of it. So I'm fairly confident that the Ingra-Gamble 3-lane analysis will prove out to meet the chief engineer's directive for allowing the project to move forward.
Great, thank you, Anna. Just want to open it up to the committee if anyone has questions or comments. And I will
It's a
note
really
that
it's a really dry topic, so I get it. It's okay if you don't have questions. Oh, okay. Sure, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm not a committee member, so if another committee member wants to speak, just I'll shut up. But I have a question for you, Anna, because I wasn't clear when I looked at the directive. A lot of historical analysis has been done on this corridor already. There's a few I can think of that I'll list. Scott Thomas, when he was there, did an analysis and found it would work fine, minus some of the intersection concerns. It might have been fine, the system would still function and not catastrophically fail. I believe the community hired a consultant to do an analysis and found similar results. The MTP also did an analysis on a regional level that, along with other lane reductions, taking away a single lane on Ingra-Gamble would function and the system would still be okay. And then the HSIP project did its own analysis. So it's a little concerning that all of that work was done and basically appears to have been ignored as part of this directive. Can you give more information to us on how is past information or past analysis being incorporated into this directive for kind of like the current analysis?
No, that's a fair point. I mean, we have the active PEL too that went out and collected lots of data for Ingra-Gamble that hasn't been published, but is going to be available to myself to inform this directive. I have a giant binder for Gamble of all of the different studies that have been done, and it's kind of an interesting walk back through time. But those studies that you mentioned from the community were in there, where they hired CH2M Hill and Kittleson. And I'll say for my final presentation for our files on this, I will be referencing those different documents because it's important to show that not only back in 2014, when that one study was done, did it pencil out, but now we have even lower volumes. So it's helpful for those different studies to support that. So that's how I plan to do it. I will say that the example that was shared with our office from the chief engineer is a Fairbanks example of College Road. So I'm not as familiar with how other studies were used to support that example. But I think it's fair to use any data that we can going back in time to tell the story. Yeah.
Okay, it's just it's crazy that this project has had more analysis done than most of the other roadway widening projects that have been done in our state. I think more analysis than even like say the Safer Seward Highway, which is, a pretty significant investment in money. So it's a little disheartening to see something this wonderful be kind of stymied by this new directive. So thank you for your effort. I just want to make sure everybody's aware that a lot of work has gone into, and I'm sure most everybody is, but into looking at this corridor. So I hope I hope it's successful in moving forward. Thanks.
Yeah, and before we move on to the next question, I will say I'm using this directive also while I review other projects. So there was a project outside of Anchorage where they were proposing to add some lanes, and I said, well, we've got this new directive that says our capacity per lane. It has a couple different metrics, whether you want to look at annual average daily traffic or the peak hour or all these different metrics, says we have excess capacity now. So why would we propose to then add more? And I'm looking for those same metrics that are outlined in that spreadsheet, the maintenance costs. Okay, what are the expected additional maintenance costs for adding that lane? What is the safety benefit or degradation anticipated, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's how I'm using this directive because if it's used to constrain a corridor, the converse should apply as well.
Great, thank you. And Daryl, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a question, just I have a comment. I've lived 3 or 4 blocks from Gamble near 14th and 15th for almost 40 years. And I walk and bike a lot, and I also drive. And looking at the traffic situation, the fact that the corridor is under capacity, it's common sense if you watch people, because the corridor is under capacity, you see a lot of people racing, stepping on the gas between the lights. And certain times of the day when you do get some backup and the traffic is more congested, it's a lot safer. People aren't speeding. But when you have that lack of capacity and some of the people have that free space, they're going to step on the gas. And then I watch pedestrians trying to cross the corridor, or Benson and Northern Lights, the same thing, because they're under capacity. There's a lot of speeding between lights and people weaving in and out. And I watch people trying to make it across the street. I'm older, but I have long legs and I'm not slow. And it's a struggle sometimes to make it across those corridors and the crosswalks. So I think a lane diet makes a lot of sense from it's just common sense if you observe the corridors.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. My office used to be in between Ingram and Gamble on 15th, next to the Green Connection. So I used to walk from my house in South Addition along 15th all year round. And so I can sympathize with the experience at peak times versus non-peak times. There's also, there's a lot of other needs in that corridor, lighting, more crosswalks, wider sidewalks, so that if people do make a mistake, it's not, a deadly mistake. They have a little space of forgiveness on either side. And the hope with the HSIP project is it is an interim treatment. It's not supposed to be the final make. I will promise you, it's a bare bones kind of treatment of, some barrier essentially to quickly reallocate that space. But it's not meant to be the final. And so I think the department is hoping that with some additional analysis and really working through our, with our partners, right, the city being the maintenance part of it, that we can really collaborate closely with this analysis and be comfortable with what we tell the public then too, as we progress this project forward.
You know, it's interesting. I have two huge binders here in my office from the Highway to Highway project because I was the chair of the Citizens and Highway Users Advisory Group, and I was the Historic Preservation Officer for the city at the time. And it's interesting looking back at those sometimes. We had this vision that the corridor was going to continue to grow and grow and grow the capacity, and it didn't. We were planning for something that really hasn't come to fruition.
Mhm.
There's a lot, and we've done it across the entire network, right? So when Aaron was talking about doing a network-wide analysis, I mean, all of these projects that we've built, A Street, I read the design study report, and it said that they expected we'd have bus rapid transit, and we were going to have a whole dedicated lane for that. So we might as well just build an extra vehicular lane because we'll have to have bus rapid transit. And they had a metric in there that said 80 buses per hour. I don't know if they know how many minutes are in an hour, but that seems implausible to offer 80 buses an hour on A Street. So the projections I always take with a grain of salt, I guess, when I look at projections.
What has grown isn't the vehicular traffic, it's the pedestrian and bicycle traffic. And unfortunately, a lot of these corridors weren't designed with bicyclists and pedestrians in mind. So let's put them on some diets.
Love it. Thank you, Daryl. I'll ask one last question. Anna, if you could just share the timeline and the next steps. I understand there maybe is an RFP for this additional analysis and matrixing that's happening or something like that. So I know from our perspective from the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, we wanted to see lane reductions sooner than later so we could have safety improvements. So can you give us just the next steps?
Sure. Yeah, it took me about half the day to put together what you saw roughly just now, which is one intersection analysis and adding our trends kind of into an existing spreadsheet. What I anticipate is probably another couple of those sessions to get me through all of the intersections that need to happen. Right now, I don't have a lot of staff. And so I'm hoping to tap into some other staff in some other sections soon to complete some of that analysis for me. The term contract that we were hoping was online to tap into is not available yet. But the funding that was going to pay for it is my funding for my office anyway. So I'm hoping to just ask some staff internally to reprioritize to do this analysis for us. After looking at the example that was provided, I feel like pretty confident that Ingram and Gamble can be done in-house. The issue is going to be in other corridors where we don't have that much robust data that's been collected over years. So that would take some time to do some additional intersection counts, traffic volume counts and such. And the problem with that is that we're in September. All of these counts generally happen in the summertime. They generally happen at the peak time, which is a whole nother topic for discussion on how we plan and coordinate our infrastructure, taking June, July, August numbers and adding additional metrics to those. So it kind of compounds this idea of growth in every single data set. But that aside, so we are going to have to dig deep and see how much data we have existing. And then those other corridors may be on hold until we can actually go out and do some additional data collection at intersections. So that's where we're at. But for Ingram and Gamble, I'm pretty confident I can work within what is available from the planning and environmental linkage to move forward. So I would say in the next couple weeks, depending on if I can get some staff assigned to this to just do some number crunching for me.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, for being transparent. Yeah, just it's such a complicated process for something that's already complicated. And these lane reductions, of course, are about improving safety for all of the reasons we already know. So it's really, like Erin said, concerning, but I'd say really disappointing and frustrating, and really not moving our city forward when we know that we're heading into the dark time of year, and recognizing September of last year broke all the records for 6 pedestrians killed in 1 month. So this is partly why I wanted to have this topic up here. I think it's a really big deal that we can't move quickly to improve our city. And I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and the amount of time and energy your staff are going to have to put into this. And just we will have an action item to take up very soon to really try to amplify the urgency to the higher levels on this. And so with that, this conversation is not done, but I think we have quorum, so we can kind of step back and do the agenda and minutes approvals, take up that action item, and then continue moving through informational items, if that sounds good to the committee. All right, Emily, I believe we have Katie here, who is a BPAC member. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
Great. Quorum, right?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Great. We also have somebody on the phone. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself so we can know who you are, and maybe you're also a committee member? There might be some trick to *6 to unmute or some such thing. Okay, not sure. We'll try to figure that out. But I think we can do our public involvement announcement. Emily, would you like to read that for us, please?
Sure. Welcome to, I see it says the policy committee meeting, but it's actually the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting. Public comments are welcome and encouraged, with 3 minutes given to each speaker. After the committee discusses each item, members of the public will be invited to comment. And as a housekeeping item, for virtual attendees, please keep your cameras off unless you are speaking. For those attending by phone, please press *6 to mute or unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. All right, approval of the agenda. Emily, can you share your screen while we cover this?
Yes.
Thank you. And then I will do do we have any objections to approving the agenda from committee members?
I'll move to approve. Lindsay, this is Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Diana.
Thanks, Diana. All right, any objections to approving the agenda? The agenda is approved. Moving on to the June 2nd BPAC meeting minutes. Hopefully folks have had a chance to take a look at those, and I'll also entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Would anyone like to move to approve?
I move. So moved.
Thanks,
I'll
Diana.
second.
Thanks, Katie. Any discussion or objection to approving the minutes? Great, the minutes are approved. Thanks, everybody. Great, we'll jump back over to our action items. And this is a letter for the BPAC to consider on Vision Zero action. I was able to share this in an email with our committee members ahead of time, and I believe we posted it so that the public could also review this and share any comments. But I'll speak to it briefly, and then we can maybe walk through, have any discussion or edits. But in preparing for this meeting, again, we're heading into the dark months of the year, and just wanted to be able to reflect on the actions the city has taken to address the safety crisis I believe we're in when it comes to the high number of collisions, fatalities, and severe injuries we're experiencing as a community, especially for pedestrians, but we're still really high numbers for anybody walking, biking, driving in our community. So at our last meeting in June, we had a presentation about the Vision Zero work group and the actions they've taken so far. It's been a few more months to kind of reflect on some of the actions that are laid out in their 1 month and 6 month action report. And then just wanted to go through and elevate some of the actions that we want to see sooner than later. So there's some background about the interagency report from the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and the municipality's traffic departments. We really wanted to elevate the priorities of reducing speeds on priority roadways and corridors. A lot of community councils have passed resolutions asking for reductions. A lot of roadways are already identified through different studies and projects, and so we wanted to really elevate that as a near-term action to take. Another piece is around, again, addressing travel speed. It gets back to the presentation we just had with Anna, where there were a number of lane reduction projects that were identified. She mentioned some of those, like on Northern Lights Boulevard, on Gamble and Ingress Street, and many others. And really, as a committee, we wanted to elevate those ones as something to move forward soon as possible, as in immediately. There's another piece on that around Rest on Red, which we think is another lower hanging fruit. We've had a few pilots out there to see how signalized intersections do with this Rest on Red in the evenings, and want to just encourage that across our community, as well as lead pedestrian intervals, where a woman was killed earlier this year at C and Benson, and just really continue to elevate that priority across our community. The next recommendation is to have the traffic department explore automated traffic enforcement. That's a much bigger topic and issue because of a charter amendment that would be needed, but that was identified in the Vision Zero action report back in 2016 and still is an item identified in the working group's report. And then the traffic department is also hosting these pedestrian fatality crash site reviews and tours, which are really somber experiences, but bring different agencies together. And so BPAC was invited to participate in the last one. We just think the information and the findings from those reports are really important to share with the community. So just encourage public publishing of those reports. And so in summation, this letter is really trying to elevate some of the actions that the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and the municipality's traffic department have already identified that they wanted to do, and they wanted to do with timelines that have come and gone. So as a BPAC, just wanting to elevate some of those items, though of course we want to see all of those actions taken to make our community safer. So this is prepared by and for the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So just wanted to open it up for any questions or comments from committee members.
The CB, I don't have any, thank you.
Thanks, CB.
This is Daryl. I support the letter. And I like the idea of looking at technology. You know, we had the photo radar at Anchorage years ago, and the real problem was it was too successful. It caught some prominent individuals running red lights, and there was a backlash. But technology has changed, and we have to face the reality that the Anchorage Police Department has been struggling for years, to hire enough people to be fully staffed. And unfortunately, the low priority frequently tends to be traffic enforcement. And, I think there's a cause and effect. If you look at the reduction in traffic enforcement and you look at the increase in fatal crashes, pedestrian vehicle crashes, I think there is a certain amount of correlation. And I think so these recommendations all make sense and could help make the community a little bit safer.
Great, thank you, Daryl. All right, any questions or comments from the public or staff? Seeing a few comments in the chat, support of the letter from committee members. Okay, well, I will entertain, maybe I should have done this first, a motion to approve this letter.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks, Katie. Are there any objections from committee members for moving this letter forward? All right, the letter is approved. Thank you all.
And maybe as a quick note, if I may, Lindsay.
Please.
So this letter will then go to the Technical Advisory Committee and the Policy Committee for them to review. Typically, they don't edit letters. They just want to see them, especially in a case like this where it's calling for action, and they'll need to approve whether the letter is actually sent to the recipients. If there's any issues with that at all, we will certainly let the committee know. And just to let you know, those two committees are not meeting in September due to schedule conflicts, so it won't be until October if there's room on the October agenda. So stay tuned and we'll get back to you as soon as that is ready.
Thank you. I'm sure we will continue to let people know. I'll be at, thanks Erin for that comment. If someone should be at the TAC and the policy committee meetings to speak on the letter, I'll try to do that. I'll coordinate with the committee, BPAC committee member to make sure that someone's there. All right, so moving back into informational items, we've moved through the first piece, so we'll go on to 6B, Neighborhood Greenways 2026 routes. And I think Donovan is here. I'm imagining Donovan is going to cover this topic. Welcome.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, so the municipality is moving forward with 2026 neighborhood greenway routes. Getting to work this year. We had Emily and AMATs also kind of helping us out with some scoring of different routes going off the non-motorized plan for kind of for some great direction there from the community on which routes to look at. Also comments that we received over our 2025 neighborhood greenways. We got a lot of comments through our website, which is still up in its kind of 2025 state, and we're going to be updating that soon with our new routes. Oh yeah, thanks Diana. Yeah, on Forest Park Drive is just kind of finishing up its construction. We had two routes that were full kind of construction neighborhood greenways, which is just a repave and inlaid Sharrows, and Forest Park Drive and Jewel Terrace got some traffic calming as well in the area to go along with those greenways. So I'm trying to let's see. So I do have a map, and we're just kind of getting this out. I'll see if I can drop it into the chat. I was going to try that. It's a PDF, but otherwise I'm going to share my screen, and I almost want to let me do it. Yeah, so this year we are looking at about 10 new miles. Let's see if if it'll let me share. Okay. Okay, is everybody seeing this flyer?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so a lot of colors, takes a minute to kind of absorb. There's a lot going on here. Don't worry, you'll get a chance to kind of absorb everything. But kind of in the thicker blue is what we did in 2025. There's a lot of streets in there. Some are kind of existing bike boulevards as well. The lighter blue is kind of an existing kind of lower stress pathway network that we're seeing out there, where wherever we're seeing, you know, kind of either lower speed bike lanes, pathways that are separated, kind of a rough but an idea of kind of what the network is looking like for a lower stress user. And our green is kind of thin green line is our pathways and trails, Greenway network, or our creek trails and things like that. And then, so in 2026, we're looking at the orange lines there, and we have some letters to kind of give the extents to each trail. These are still proposed. So we're going to be we're just starting out a process of opening up, you know, some insights. These are somewhat well vetted as far as speeds and traffic counts. We looked at everything from land use, schools, trail connections, kind of public areas, and what we're seeing out there in the kind of the user network. And we're able to kind of score a lot of things and across kind of a matrix to you know, look at quite a few roads. I don't have that map out right now, but all the roads that we did look at and kind of, you know, discussed a little bit. But so these are still proposed and kind of going to be going out to community councils. This year we will be doing more flyers and door hangers, particularly folks that live along these corridors. So they kind of get a little bit more time to know what's going on in their neighborhood. I think something we would have liked to have done a little bit sooner with last year's, but just kind of weren't able to get out there in the timeline that we had, but a little bit more ahead of the ball this year. So looking forward to that. Yeah, so yeah, I guess if there's any questions on the routes here, I think we can jump into that maybe.
Great, thanks. Any questions or comments from committee members? Diana had a very positive comment in the chat. You go ahead, Diana.
Has anybody, I mean, has there been any comments on on Forest Park Drive? I know one friend of mine was concerned that the stop sign, like the sign blocked the stop sign, but I don't know. I looked at it, it's not bad to me. It's just, I think it takes some time for people to get used to it. But I wonder if you had feedback on them. Are people loving them, or like, are they upset, or what's happening?
Nothing, you know, nothing, you know, we've had a few comments. I think particularly after we put the flyers for Forest Park Drive, we were able to kind of do flyers in the neighborhood there, and we got some comments back. Not a ton, you know, a handful. I want to say about 5 folks wrote in. You know, and I think maybe of those 5, there were about you know, 3 or kind of regarding what the neighborhood greenways in particular were. Some there were in regards to the traffic calming and speed humps, and more so asking, well, hey, do this on my road too, was kind of the idea there. We have gotten some comments about, and in that same vein, about Hillcrest, you know, and now it's kind of, you know, I guess positive in the sense of to do more. I think, yeah, and then so far, like this summer, we've gotten a few comments here and there. Most of them are, I think the majority of them are kind of just having to do with maybe sign placement. I think one of our signs had to get modified last minute, and unfortunately, that modification got placed and it blocked someone's kind of boat access to their backyard. So things like that. And there have been one or two folks that are just kind of concerned about what it is. We've gotten asked, do I live on a bike trail now? And so kind of trying to, I think getting the informing drivers and bicyclists of what do they mean exactly? What do the markings mean? How do you use a neighborhood greenway? You know, I have had some folks who bike who have kind of understood them to be, well, I shouldn't get passed on a neighborhood greenway by a vehicle. Like they should be going a bicycle speed, which isn't really the case. You know, the speed limit is 20. And you do have, you know, it is kind of, the sharrows kind of give bicyclists vertical lane positioning. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't get past it all. Like cars can drive around you on a neighborhood greenway, just like a slow moving vehicle, hopefully with due care and consideration as always. So yeah, but sorry to answer your question. That was a long answer. Sorry, Dana, but mostly positive feedback there.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's significant on Forest Park Drive, and I think that's right. When you come down Forest Park Drive, you do like then look at Hillcrest. It's like it would be great to have it on Hillcrest, but yeah, I totally understand. You can't do that on every single street, but thank you. It's so awesome and how quickly it all came together. Really, it's really amazing, actually.
Yeah, big kudos to our sign and shop who've been really putting it in a lot of work this summer to kind of get this on top of their usual load of getting crosswalks and everything painted and signed. So yeah, it's been amazing to see them get them out there. They go quick. Yeah, I see Anna's hand up.
Yeah, just as a citizen, I'm thrilled with them too. I think it's working better than I really had anticipated, to be honest. Only because I think I have like a very pessimistic view on what drivers are going to do. So, anyway, I live on one of them, and it's been great. I did have a question. Are you also looking at adding like stop signs at intersections that maybe didn't have stop signs before? One location would be near the Park Strip, where the 10th Bike Boulevard is. I just find it's getting more people to that intersection, but then getting across those two intersections to continue on N Street in that really nice, calm area would be amazing. So just food for thought. And then I didn't know if you were also collecting any more data on bicycle like uptick or anything for the project.
Yeah, great questions. I'll go in reverse order. Yes, we are collecting data. We collected data kind of earlier in the summer last year and then sent them back out on just a few select ones. And I think next summer we're going to do a little bit more data collection on kind of user data, seeing the mode shift or, you know, just number of users, if that's shifting. And we are, there is going to be a process. It's been a little bit more of a policy lift to look at the stop sign reevaluations, but that is moving forward. And yeah, definitely a park strip is one of them. I'd kind of like it to look more like G Street and the park strip. They kind of have a little bit more balled out, but it is a three-way stop there as well. Quite a few other locations to kind of. But yeah, we're rewriting that policy in our kind of version of the ATM so we can kind of have that all backed up and have our as we move forward what that looks like. I think that's definitely looking forward to getting those kind of those stop sign evaluations done this winter. So then like kind of a summer rollout of next summer. So.
Thanks, Donovan. I have a question. I was trying to follow along on the website on the map so I could like zoom in and see the routes, but I don't think these selected routes for 2026 are on the map. There's some of the primary and secondary ones. So can you just make them updated?
Yeah. This is a little bit of a sneak preview actually for our VPAC committee. So you guys are kind of the first ones to see this map. But yeah, we'll be updating that on the website here shortly and getting, so you can kind of zoom in on everything and kind of get these extents and comment and check stuff out like that.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from folks? Awesome. Thanks, Donovan.
All right. Thanks.
Appreciate you. All right, changing gears, we'll do a update for the Minnesota and INL corridor plan update. We've got one from R&M. Hey, welcome.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Lindsay. Okay, I'll try to keep this short. I think a couple of you have seen this. Aaron, I think maybe 8 times. Lindsay, this might be your second or third. And I know you've seen it a couple of times. Okay, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Juan Lee with R&M Consultants. I'm a planner. I used to work at AMATS, used to work at the Muni in the Long Range Planning Department. So I come from a land use transportation background. I am supporting the Department of Transportation and AMATS, who is funding the Minnesota Corridor Plan, Minnesota and INL Street Corridor Plan. So we're implementing the AMATS MTP, the Long Range 2050 MTP, as well as the AMATS Safety Plan that was completed last year. So let me share screen. Let's hope this works. I have 3 computer screens, so let's see if it cooperates. Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna go off camera for the presentation because I have to get close up to the screen. All right, so we started the project about a year-ish ago, year and 3 months ago. Looking at the Minnesota and INL Street comprehensively. So looking at it in terms of the context of the corridor, the project starts at International Airport Road interchange to the northern end, which is 3rd Avenue. So it's a long corridor. It's got a lot of different things happening all throughout the context. And our goal is to look at each of those sections and how different they are from each other and to identify the issues and then come up with solutions to address all the issues that we've heard. Solutions, we call them countermeasures sometimes. Safety is one of the #1 priorities for the corridor. Lindsay and several other people tonight have mentioned the pedestrian fatalities. They have happened on Minnesota more recently, less than a year ago, last fall, winter. So that is one number one priority for the corridor, as well as how do we integrate the land use. I'll go into the project team in a minute, but land use, treating corridors, transportation corridors, not just as thoroughfares for moving vehicles, but really planning for the people, the users, all the different users, the non-motorized users, including people who roll, people who bike, people who walk, run, all the things. People who walk their dogs or their little kids. There's lots of schools, 5 schools in the corridor. What is the land use doing and how is the transportation corridor responding to that, right? A lot of times our transportation corridors may be a little bit mismatched with what's happening in the land use. And obviously, Minnesota, INL Street were built a long time ago in the late 60s, and Minnesota used to be called the bypass. And so what was it bypassing and why did we have this Minnesota corridor? Why was it built as an alternative corridor to Spinard Road back in the day? There is topography there and issues with snow and ice in the winter and getting up the hill. And so Minnesota provided a secondary access. quickly, just there's a whole host of us. I'm just here representing the project tonight, but James Starzig from DOT is our project manager. We've got Mark and Ben from DOT. We've got all your transportation professionals that work on these types of projects in the state. We've got Dow, we've got Kinney Engineering, and of course AMAT staff as an integral part of the project management team. But we also have McKinley Research Group, who have helped us look at social economic projections. We looked at land use projections. We looked at traffic. So all the different corridor conditions, and not just the annual traffic data or crash data, but all the context, all the comprehensive look at the corridor. All right, so I'm going to show you some what I call precedent images, ideas, solutions that have worked in other communities that could work for Minnesota. We don't have preferred alternatives yet. We are planning level corridor plan, no engineering design yet. We want to make sure that the planning is done in a process-oriented way, and we are not moving towards the solution yet. I've given this presentation many times. It changes a little bit every time because we've heard feedback. Could this work? Is this multi-way boulevard that I'm going to show you? It's a new type of corridor that we don't have here in Anchorage. We have one in Fairbanks. This one is Octavia Boulevard in San Francisco. It was a multi-way boulevard, was recommended in the 2040 MTP. So we are looking at it as a possible solution to balance all the competing needs and some compatible needs and complementary needs within the Minnesota and INL Street corridor. The multi-way boulevards specifically, we would look at in that Midtown section between Tudor and Benson, or 26th Avenue, actually before Hillcrest. Is this something that's possible? It allows for access to local businesses and destinations, parks, schools, grocery stores, your Starbucks drive-through, your bookstores. And it helps to separate that local access traffic from the through traffic that's necessary for our economy, for moving freight from the airport to the port and back. So in looking at a multi-way boulevard, it's not one size fits all. There's I think at least 20 iterations that we've looked at that could possibly happen on Minnesota. So I'll show you a couple more visualizations or concepts from other cities that can help explain what a multi-way boulevard is and why it's not one size fits all. You could have the access lane on both sides. You could have the access lane on one side. You could have separated bike pathways, on-street parking. Although we are not proposing on-street parking for Minnesota at this point in the Midtown corridor, there is a lot of parking that already exists on sites for the businesses. This one's in Saskatoon, Canada. This concept and a plan has been approved to be constructed. Here's another perspective of that. So you can see there's medians that separate the different lanes. We've been doing our rounds, talking to the municipality, talking to DOT chiefs, talking to DOT maintenance and operations on how the different options could work for Minnesota and how it would be from the perspective of maintenance. How would this help maintenance, snow storage, drainage facilities during our rainy, slushy seasons? Just a couple more examples of how speeds are treated in these different communities. The travel lane is 30 miles per hour. Some of the access lanes, it's almost like a frontage lane, but those are typically lower speeds at 15, 20 miles per hour in some of these communities that have multi-way boulevards. And this is a before and after treatment of what it looked like before a multi-way boulevard was applied and then after. How the intersections are treated with multi-way boulevards. As you can see there, these are improved pedestrian bicycle treatments at the intersections. We looked at the possibility of a roundabout in a couple sections of Minnesota. We're not saying at this point that this is the right solution. We do have to do a little more in-depth analysis, but we wanted to be transparent and show all the different options that we're looking at. We heard a lot about pedestrian crossings, both mid-block crossings and then where there are none on Minnesota and INL Street. And then how can they be improved, optimized, or just installed where there are none to help the visibility of pedestrians crossing. We talked a lot about the shoulder season, and then we've got winter coming where it's very dark. So just a couple examples that we looked at that are possible, including pedestrian corrals, illuminated crosswalks, the lit crosswalks, which the before and after, just the difference in the visibility. And then a pedestrian scramble, is that possible? Would that be acceptable to Anchorage residents? Where could that possibly go? We don't have specific locations yet. That is the next step in our analysis, but potentially Northern Lights and Minnesota there right by the cars there, the schools, and then the Walgreens corner. And then we looked at the possibility of this protected intersection for pedestrians as well. We're still trying to resolve, like, how would this work with snow maintenance, plowing, and then drainage, of course. And then other countermeasures, I think this was in the letter that for the Vision Zero that the committee is looking at, but just enforcement, speed reductions, and, you know, speed signs that help change driver behavior, hopefully, at least educating them, like, you are going too fast, please slow down. A frowny face would be awesome, but I don't know if we could get that. And then, of course, Daryl earlier talked about police enforcement, traffic enforcement is part of the picture as well. That is obviously very cost intensive, labor intensive. So it is a solution, though, that we cannot not look at. And then Anna's presentation earlier was very directly related to this. Our prioritization criteria as we move forward in our analysis to what solutions could possibly work, we need to keep in mind the lane reduction memo and the analysis that's required if we were to repurpose the lanes on INL Street in Minnesota. And this is some of the criteria that we've looked at. A lot of it is related or exactly the same as what's in the memo, because we want to make sure we do our analysis now so that it would be supported. If we were to recommend a pilot project, demonstration project, lane reduction, pilots, demonstrations, speed reductions, how would that lane reallocation, how would that be supported through that memo process? And then emergency response is obviously very important as well. Would our future recommendations for Minnesota and INL Street improve emergency response time? We have plans to talk to emergency responders once we get a little further along in our analysis. And then I just want to throw out there that we are working with a steering committee. Lindsay and Donovan are on there, and all the community councils within the Midtown area, including South Addition, Spenard, Turnagain, North Star. I think that's everybody. And then business representatives are also on the steering committee. And I am open for questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments, questions from the committee? Or public and staff?
Thanks, Juan. It's just super exciting to talk about this stuff and imagine something different. I live in West Anchorage and Turnagain, so I would love to see something different.
All right, thanks, Katie.
All right. Last call. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Diana.
I was driving on the corridor, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they had that, they were seeing how fast you were driving. Does that have anything to do with this project? I mean, it was interesting to me because it's 45 miles per hour at part of it. It seems like right by cars, and it just seemed so fast. I mean, I couldn't get to, I mean, I was always way lower. I just wondered if that was part of it and if that was something that is helping to inform the decision. It's like the speed limit I wasn't driving that fast. So it was looking at it like, oh my gosh. It was.
Yeah, great question, Diana. It's not part of this project, but obviously it's on Minnesota. So the data that's being collected, which maybe Anna, I don't know if you have any more information on those speed signs.
Yeah, those were part of our Vision Zero tasks for moving those speed feedback carts around the city to our high crash corridors. Some corridors, we don't even have enough space to put those speed feedback carts on. So I'd love to put one on Benson, but we don't have even a median there to put it, or Ingrid Gamble. We don't have any space to put those in. But Minnesota, we have that huge median that was just reconstructed last summer. So we were able to put those there. And you're right, it is 45 miles an hour through all of Minnesota from Tudor all the way to almost 15th Avenue.
That's too fast. That's what I want to say.
Part of why it's part of our high injury network. High speeds means severe and fatal injuries and death. Great. Well, thank you, Juan. I think folks on the committee can keep digesting this part for the Minnesota corridor and IML Street plans. Send comments and feedback to her and the planning team. And I really hope to see some innovative and creative approaches to make this corridor safer for the community. So thanks for presenting tonight.
Thank you.
All right, I think we are in our AMAT section where we'll have different AMAT staff cover a few different topics. I think. So the next topic is the household travel survey.
That will be
Christine,
me.
is that you? Great.
That's me. Yeah, I also wanted to say I love the frowny face for the speed limit signs. I think that's super impactful if that was ever a possibility. I loved that example one. I am just presenting on our household travel survey is launching in the next couple weeks. It's called Your Daily Journey, and randomly selected households will receive an invitation to participate. The purpose of the study, AMATS does it every 10 years or so to help inform the travel demand model. It collects regional travel data. So who's traveling from your household? Where are they going? How long does it take them to get there? And what modes of travel are they choosing to take? And anybody who is selected, it's randomly invitations will be go to random households just so that the data that we receive can be statistically valid. And the households that receive that data will be incentivized to complete the survey. They can complete it on an app, and that would track their travel for 7 days. And then each household member would download the app and track their data. Kids in the household, one adult member would be instructed to report on their children's travel. But if they don't want to use an app, participants can go online where they can do the survey over the phone. And the online and phone survey would just be a 1 day kind of just a 1 day report. So it wouldn't be the full 7 days. And then once the household has completed it, they will receive a gift card as a thank you. So we're hoping this is just kind of getting the word out. We can't solicit participation. It will just go to whoever it goes to, but we really hope that the households that do receive that invitation in the mail will choose to participate, because it's important place-based data to know how our community and our region travels and chooses to travel, so it can help make better informed decisions moving forward.
Great, thanks. Any comments or questions? I have a question. I think this is maybe the survey where we find out maybe how many households, like people bicycle commute or take the bus, and what are can you give just like some high level examples of what kind of information we'll hope to gather?
Yeah, the initial kind of questions will be kind of demographics of the household, and then they will be how many vehicles do you have? How do you choose to travel? And then if you use the app, even if you're choosing just to go on a walking your dog, like that's still important information. And then each day it'll track you and it'll ask you where you went, who was in your car, how you got there, and then it'll just ask you some of your choice information. So how many bikes do you have? Do you choose to bike? What's your preferred mode? There will be kind of like a daily just kind of like question that will pop up separate from just the tracking data. And then, yeah, so we hope to get some good information from it.
Oh, thank you. Great. Any other comments or questions? Cool. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
All right. Next topic is the 2027-2030 funding program timeline. Erin, hello.
Hello, hey everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So we are starting the update of our next funding program. It is the 27 through 30. We have the timeline here so you can kind of see the general time of when we're going to be posting it for public comments. We may switch it up depending on how things go. We recently had a work session with the TAC and PC where they had discussion over the projects that we show in the 27 to 30 tip. It is currently not out necessarily for public comment or review at this time, so they have to wait a little bit longer, but it'll be out soon. We're doing something a little different with this go around. We're not actually doing a call for nominations. We're just pulling from our long range plan, the MTP, and putting projects in based on that. And this go around as well, we don't have many new projects that we're adding to the tip. It's a lot of the already existing projects like Fireweed, the phases of Spinard, Fish Creek, possibly depending on how that goes, and other things like that. And so it's not a lot of new stuff because we have a lot of needs and not enough money to take care of it all in this next go around. So there'll probably be some projects that unfortunately have to get delayed to the next tip cycle. That's kind of the nature of how things go with this funding, especially with the increasing costs of projects. They're ramping up pretty quickly. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up that here's the timeline for it. Keep an eye out. You'll be seeing it released for public comment. Our anticipation is January. We start the 45-day public comment period, and it'll go from January and mid-February, where we also do our public hearing at the assembly. So now's a good time to kind of get ready for it, and we'll let you know when it comes out. Thank you.
Thanks. I have a question though. I know you had a work session and maybe there is another work session coming up. Can you just give us that?
Yes, thank you for the reminder. I was like, I can't forget it. We have another work session coming up. It is on the 18th. Let me just check. Yeah, the 18th of September. It'll be from 1 to 3 p.m. So we'll send out a notice about that. So don't worry, you haven't missed it. Everything still, we'll be releasing it this week, Thursday, to notice everybody. There'll be a virtual or in-person option. In-person will be in the conference room 30 in the Elmore building where the TAC meets. And then we have the Teams link if you want to join then.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee? All right. Maybe we'll keep going with you. We got oh, go ahead, Diana.
So no projects. So we're just keeping the projects that we have?
No, there's new projects, just not that many. At this point, we have 2 new Complete Streets projects, and then 2 new active transportation projects is what I presented at the work session. The Complete Streets projects are 15th Avenue rehabilitation, so on the western edge from L to Cordova Street, basically looking at taking away the 2-way left turn lane through the whole length and putting in bike lanes. And then we have a Denali Complete Street project, so the whole length of Denali from Tudor to Fireweed, including the intersection of Tudor and maybe a little bit into Eagle Street, helping to connect there, making a complete street of Denali, whatever that looks like. And then the active transportation new projects are it's a connection on Tudor Road to Tudor to Taft, basically. It's where it's kind of an existing connection and we're making it better. So it's a small little connection at this point. And then there's a project recommendation in there for the Hyder Street Greenway that was listed as part of the Sewer to Glen PEL. So the work session was really giving an opportunity for the committees to discuss the items. We'll be discussing them more at the work session, the next work session. So if you haven't listened to the recording, I definitely recommend you do, because there were some interesting discussions, especially there at the end, with the active transportation project for Hyder. And then we'll see how next Thursday goes.
Thank you. Excellent question, Diana. I will be circling back to folks about the Hyder Greenway in particular, because this is a really important project for the neighborhood in Fairview, but not just for the neighborhood. And there was a lot of comments about this project and whether it should move forward or not. So thanks to AMAT staff for moving that forward as a recommendation for consideration. It's a big deal. I put the link in the chat. It's got the recording. All right, so our next topic is the AMAT's quarterly project updates.
Yeah, this is from me. I just wanted to make sure that the committee is aware that these quarterly project updates happen. So the link on your agenda is a permanent link that will always go to the most recent update. So it's very convenient if you want to bookmark that. You can also find it through the AMAT's website. And so these project updates are prepared by the AMAT's liaison, James Starzek, over at DOT. And it just walks through every project that's underway and tells you what's going on with it. So it's an extremely useful way to keep up to date on what's happening and what you might want to be staying involved with. So I won't go through all that now. I just wanted to provide the link on the agenda, and I'd encourage you to bookmark that for future reference. Are there any questions? Oh, sorry, Lindsay, you can say that part.
No, I would love that you were saying it, because I was like, I do have a question, but maybe it's for James Starzak. I was just noticing in a couple places in this update that there are a couple references to delays on projects due to the STIP process, the state's transportation improvement program process. That's been really hard to understand how it's impacting and delaying really important projects, but it's in there a couple times. Is there anywhere to really understand how the delays in the STIP approval process has impacted our local projects? Or is this kind of the best place to try to understand for just a few projects?
That's a great question. I don't know if Aaron wants to weigh in on that. It's definitely hard to follow.
Yeah,
I know. He mentioned the Fish Creek Trail rehab, like the connection to the coastal trail, right? And it says STIP amendment delays might affect design and construction. I just don't understand.
It does. It is hard to follow, but the best way that you're going to be able to follow is when we do TIP amendments, which we have one that we're starting right now that will reflect some of the delays. I think that you'd have to remember that this quarterly report was for the quarter ending at the end of June.
2 months ago.
So it's been a little bit, and at that time, the STIP wasn't approved, but it got approved beginning of July. So since then, DOT staff have been working really diligently to keep projects moving forward. So the main thing I would say is the next amendment we have, you'll get an idea of what has been delayed because of that or other reasons.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, well, I think we can go over to the BPAC open seats, just some housekeeping about BPAC.
Yes, and I will start us off here as well. So I regret to report that Daryl Hess is stepping off the committee as of tomorrow. He very kindly joined us today so that we could achieve quorum, which is the only reason we did. So thank you so much, Daryl, for that last act of service. I know you've been on this committee for many years, and we very much appreciated all of your contributions as well as your leadership for several years as chair.
Thank you. I'm going to miss being on the BPAC, but I am the chair of the new Municipal Public Naming Commission, and it's, as we're getting underway, it's taken a little bit of more of my time than I anticipated.
That's totally fair. I know there's many worthwhile things to be involved with, and thanks for selecting us for so long.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
I also received a message from Michael Williams the other day that he needs to step off, so he is off the committee. So I should mention Daryl was in a public member seat. So any member of the public would be able to apply to fill that seat. Michael was in the community or environmental organization seat. He works for NOAA, and any community organization or environmentally inclined organization could provide a representative as an applicant to that seat. We do also still have a vacant seat for the business organization member. That can be anyone affiliated with a business and sort of authorized to represent that business. It doesn't need to be the owner. If the owner says, this person is my representative, it can be someone else. They don't necessarily have to be bicycle or pedestrian related with their business. As long as they're interested, they're welcome to apply. And then the fourth vacant seat is for the bicycle organization. We have had one applicant for that seat. It's the only one we have an applicant for at this time. So hopefully we can get at least one of these 4 seats filled. If you know anyone who would be interested, please encourage them to apply. You can go to the BPAC committee page on the AMATS website, has a link where you can apply, or just give them my email address and I can get them set up with that application process. It's pretty simple. It just asks a little bit about their interest and any relevant experience. They don't need to have a long CV that is related to this, bicycle or pedestrian work, as long as they're interested and willing to commit to attending the meetings. So the next few weeks would be a wonderful time to start asking people and trying to recruit people if you have any ideas. We're also hoping to put this on the October agenda for the TAC and the PC. They do need to confirm applicants. So I'd love to get the committee filled by our December meeting. So please reach out if you know anyone you think might be interested.
Great, thank you. That has brought us through our agenda topics this evening, and we are now to committee comments. I'd like to open it up to any committee comments. Any committee members want to share anything?
Hey, this is CB. I appreciate you guys for holding this meeting. My involvement is from the blind and low vision community, and I focus on maintenance for pedestrians mostly, myself included, white cane travel, wheelchair travel. And it's just really nice to hear you guys share an outlook of a better pedestrian bicycle system. So I appreciate you and thank you.
Great, thank you, CB. I will give a committee comment while others think about it. I want to thank you, Daryl. I didn't know you'd be stepping down, but totally makes sense. And I'm so grateful that you'll continue serving with the naming commission. Literally, as I was thinking about this meeting tonight, I was like, oh, how would Daryl have run this meeting? Well, how would he have said these things? Because you really bring an even keel and such a human-centered approach to this work. And I'm so grateful that you were able to chair and lead the way for so long and help imprint that on me. So thank you, Daryl. I appreciate everything that you do. And I'm still going to be able to check in on how many steps you're walking with Tigger and where in the community you are. So thank you for your service. It really meant a lot to this committee.
Thank you, Lindsay. As I was sitting here, I just posted Tigger's Monday afternoon walk photos.
Great. Any other comments from the committee? Getting lots of thanks in the chat as well. Any comments from the public or staff? Oh, Katie, were you trying to say something?
No, sorry, my daughter is playing.
Precious. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you, Diane. Thanks, Katie. Good teamwork. Thanks, everyone. All right. With
Good
that,
night.
thank